Professor, welcome back to TVP World. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me again.
It's a pleasure. So, as you've just heard from my colleague, Ben Lee, breaking down the situation on the front line, the need for munitions is great. Things are looking a little bit dark for the Ukrainian military. How long, in your assessment, will it be before the Ukrainians get what they need?
Well, I just can say that I hope as soon as possible. And the current crisis that we have indeed on the front line on the Ukrainian side is a direct result of the delay of this, both of the European and the American help. The EU had promised many more shells than it delivered, and the US has, after a 6-month delay only, adopted now its package. So these bad news are a direct result of that. Otherwise, I think the situation would be different. On the other hand, one also has to say that Ukraine is a large country. So even if a few minor settlements are lost in the east, this will not principally change the situation.
Right, understood. But the aid, for example, the American aid that has eventually was approved, is not all military equipment. There's humanitarian aid and there are other bits and pieces in there. Do you think that the amount of military equipment that Ukraine is getting is sufficient to actually allow it to win? Or are we heading towards a frozen conflict?
Well, currently it's clearly not enough, and there are hopes that perhaps the delivery of these ATACMS, longer range missiles with a range of 300 kilometers, will change the situation. That the F-16 that we have been talking a lot already about will finally arrive, and also that Ukraine's own advances in drone technology will have more effect, and that perhaps by the end of this year or even earlier, we will get into a new situation, and that there will be then new advances by Ukraine and new liberated territories. The various agreements that Ukraine is currently signing with Western countries, security agreements, are quite promising. At least on paper, this all looks not so bad for Ukraine. The question is how quickly this all is going to be implemented, what is being promised in these different documents.
Indeed, indeed. It's all a matter of speed. We just hope that Ukrainian soldiers manage to hold back the Russians until the weapons finally arrive. Now, staying with the weapons, David Cameron, the British Defence Secretary, visited Kiev and said that the British military equipment should be used also to attack targets in Russia to fight back. Now, this is a departure, is it not, Professor, from the previous line that donors took?
Yes, this is basically just the international legal situation that Cameron has been here voicing, and the political position of the West has so far been that Western weaponry should not be used on Russian state territory, and that it should solely be used on the occupied territories of Ukraine, the Russian-occupied territories of Ukraine. This is now a significant departure. I'm afraid not many countries will follow Cameron's lead, and Germany, for instance, I'm pretty sure will stick to the old position. Britain is now, after it has left the European Union, also freer in its communication than it used to be when it was still a member of the European Union. And in this particular case, perhaps this may be to the advantage of Ukraine. Although in other regards, of course, it would have been better if Britain would be acting within the European Union. But here we have now a new development coming out of Britain and perhaps being seminal also, at least for some countries in continental Europe.
Indeed, yes. We hope more countries actually follow that trend. Now, the ability to fire into Russia, attack logistics, attack energy stores, oil storage, and so on, is clearly going to have an impact on the Russian ability to conduct this war. What do you think that impact might be?
Well, the main problem of Ukraine is, of course, that Russia can launch more or less longer-range weapons from Russian territory, and Ukraine then has to defend its cities, its settlements, its civilian infrastructure. And if Ukraine will be better able with its own weaponry, for instance, with its own drones, and also with foreign weaponry, if this is now becoming possible after Cameron's statement, to reach actually the launch sites of this long-range weaponry, this will obviously be very advantageous to Ukraine. Then it does not have to constantly fight the symptom of the problem, but can fight the problem itself. The same goes also for the occupied territories of Ukraine, from where a part of these launches are being made, above all from Crimea.
Indeed, yes. Well, we shall be watching that closely. Moving now to the Easter holiday, Professor. Clearly a very important occasion in the Orthodox calendar. Now, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church has actually moved away, has actually split from the Russian Orthodox Church. But there are representatives still of the Russian Church in Ukraine. How would you characterize the relationship between those two segments of the Orthodox Church?
It's obviously a tense relationship, although one has to say that the so-called Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchy has departed from the line, obviously, of the Russian Orthodox Church. So even though this is formally a part of the Russian Orthodox Church, this Ukrainian branch is now positioning itself in this war differently. Still, there is, of course, also the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, the Autocephalous Church of Ukraine, which is now the dominant church in Ukraine, and there is competition between the different Orthodox churches. And Ukraine is now basically returning to a modus that is common in the Orthodox world, basically, that there are national Orthodox churches where basically each of the countries that has a predominantly Christian Orthodox religion has its own national Orthodox church. That's different from the Protestant and from the Catholic churches, which are less nationally focused, but in the Orthodox world, this is the rule.
Understood. So clearly, I mean, we saw some video earlier of some volunteers preparing food and various other Easter-related elements for soldiers on the front line. How widely is Easter celebrated in Ukraine?
Easter is traditionally, for the Orthodox world, more important than Christmas. It's a big thing in Ukraine, bigger than, I would say, than Christmas. It's the major religious holiday of the year, and there are lots of traditions around it, as we're just seeing, and it's indeed a major event in Ukraine every year, and somewhat different, I would say, from Germany, where Easter is more, I would say, a children's holiday. and less so or less important, I would say, a religious holiday.
Okay, now, one of the reasons for the falling out between the Russian and Ukrainian churches was that the Russian church was accused of having a political agenda. What is the role in politics or the national fabric of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, apart from, of course, the religion itself?
It's obviously now focused on defense. I mean, the situation is here different. I mean, we have a confrontation now also between the Russian and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, but the difference is, of course, that the Russian Orthodox Church is sort of paralleling the Russian state in claiming territory beyond the territory of Russia, and it regards Ukraine as its so-called canonical territory. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church is obviously now also mainly focused on support for the Ukrainian state, the Ukrainian people in this defensive war. But it is a church that is separated from the state, unlike the Russian Orthodox Church. And it has its own life, and it is not a de facto part of the Ukrainian state. And there are also different Orthodox churches, as we already indicated at the beginning.
Understood. Understood. Now, recently, Ukraine, of course, has reduced the age for conscription of its soldiers and is trying to encourage Ukrainians living outside the country to come back and help in the war effort. What does that tell you about the situation on the front line, apart from, of course, the fact that Ukrainian soldiers are dying?
Obviously, Ukraine needs soldiers, and currently the situation, as I see it, is such that the service on the front line is, of course, very dangerous, and this sort of package that currently Ukraine is able to offer its soldiers, it's not that attractive. It's a relatively large salary by Ukrainian standards, but it's below, I would say, let's say a German monthly salary. And in that connection, I would just mention that this issue of the confiscated money outside Russia is rather important, because if Ukraine could get this money, as we've been discussing now for 2 years, then it could provide its soldiers a much more attractive package, salary and compensation and so on. And then I would guess it would also have less.
Absolutely. Well, we hope that process speeds up as well. Professor, thank you very, very much indeed for coming along and sharing your insights on this very important topic. Have a good evening, sir.